Lamberto Bava's 1985 classic Demons is one of the most enjoyable horror films ever made. Representing a changing landscape in the genre, the film seems to be something of a reaction to emerging attitudes to the horror film. Relentlessly violent and extremely high energy, Demons always keeps the viewer on their toes and never allows them to stop having fun. I am the Italian Horror Guy, and this is the Italian Horror Guy podcast. So, obviously, it's necessary to sort of apologise straight off the bat. I think that there has been quite a massive gap since the last episode, which is on Macabre, also by Lamberto Bava. I have had big changes in my life. I've moved to a completely different place, and I have not been able to dedicate too much time to podcasts in recent weeks, so I do apologise for that. But I think everything's stabilised now to the point that I'll be back to the weekly Sunday release of this show and others. So, check out the Horror Film Science podcast as well. Demons is a very, very special film to me. I know that sounds a little bit drastic, and especially given the nature of it, but I remember many years ago, well, not too many, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. I was on a train with my partner at the time. I was in Melbourne, which is where I live now, and this is quite genuine. I was looking around, and it was a train that went underground, and when we were underground, coming in and out of tunnels, I was looking at the out of the train. I thought, Jesus, this reminds me a lot of Demons. And then, so we're on our way into the city, and when we got there, we went to a few different shops, and there's this one really cool pop culture store in the heart of Melbourne that I now live very, very close to, and they sell, amongst other things, Italian horror films. There's not a lot of places around, as you'd imagine, that there's a decent collection, if not any collection, of Italian horror films. So I bought whatever I bought, and then I went to the guy behind the counter, and he noticed what I was getting, and he sort of asked me about, I can't remember what the DVDs were, but he asked me about it and said, "Oh, you like Italian horror films?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he gives me this little card, and he says, "Well, would you like to come and see this movie on Saturday night?" And of course the movie was Demons. Now, I shouldn't need to point out the monstrous improbability of all that all this happened sort of within an hour. Demons isn't the kind of movie that just sort of appears in one's life, and the idea that the thought of it had come to my head randomly, I don't believe in like spirits and ghosts and anything, but that was one of the strangest coincidences. So it was this sort of little underground film society, and they would put on random films, often horror films, and the guy has actually written a lot of books and even interviewed John Carpenter for one of his books. So he's pretty cool. Gave me that, and I went to the movie with my girlfriend a few days later, and I'm not sure if she was a massive fan of Demons, but nonetheless it was really awesome because Giorgetto Giancarlo did a little video introduction to the movie for us, which was just damn cool, and I've loved her ever since. So there you go. There's me indulging in my previous experience with Demons. But so to go a little bit further into that, I'll also point out I finally got back to the blog. I think they're going to be, so get on the Italian Horror Guy website, and I'll be, again, I think I've got time now and the organisation now to sort of be able to dedicate things to that. And when I sat down and watched the movie this morning, I went on a bit of a tear and wrote up a blog post. I don't think it's necessarily the greatest writing ever, but I do think it's a really interesting take. I'm sure some of my attitudes about it will come out while talking on this podcast, but the nature of what I was talking about was basically that I'm a little bit maybe not disappointed, let's just say a little bit confused by this sort of universal, what would you say? The universal, I would say, ignorance to the fact that this film is actually quite deep in a weird way. That's not me trying to claim that it's some kind of masterpiece or anything like that. But it is, from critics, from fans, really from everyone I've ever seen talk about or comment on this film. The universal view is that it has nothing to say. It's plotless, and that it's throwaway, and its purpose is purely to have fun. Now, in my view, there would be nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I think there's we do get into this genre, I think, mainly for fun, and I think the Italian horror film is extremely fun. What I think that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me is why no one seems to have picked up on the obvious sort of social comment or criticism of people that's going on in this film. So again, check out my blog post. I quite liked it. But I think I'll talk about it as we move through the plot, actually. So there you go. So let's start with the plot, and just point out as well, we're in I think by the mid 1980s we're in a bit of a not taking ourselves too seriously mode, I think, of the horror film. We've moved away from, I think we're moving into an era, say, with the slasher film, where things are a bit self-reflexive. We're getting films about this time, like April Fool's Day, where it sort of turns out everything was bullshit. I think you could almost argue that this film is partly reflective of a bit of a death of a certain era of the horror film, and it's not because of quality or anything like that, but I think it's because there's an awareness that horror films don't necessarily have to be taken completely seriously, that comes out, and you see that in the film within a film. I can't remember what that one's called, but I love how comically cheesy it is. But it is funny because when I have watched this film in the past, not that Demons itself isn't cheesy, but I'd never really thought that its cheese levels was part of those of the film within a film. But it must be said, there's not a massive gap. Some of the dialogue in this is just corny to the extreme, and I'm all for it, because you can tell that it's embracing that. But at the same time, the very notion that you're going to make a film and it's a horror film, it's ostensibly, if that's the right word, serious, and they've decided let's not make this overly serious. I even think, by this point, we've seen so many films that are either post-apocalyptic or in the early process of the apocalypse, shall we say. And for the most part, this film's really contained, but it also has that, the ending, so we know that, whatever the hell it is, it's spreading elsewhere. But, I think previously a big aim with those kinds of films was to, do their best to be taken as seriously as possible, and I just feel like Demons doesn't ask to be taken too seriously. And I think it's a cheeky swipe at critics of the horror genre, so we'll get to that. So, we start off, and there is Cheryl on the train, just looking around, and I really love how unashamed the film is right from the start about, like, it's... I don't know if anyone else uses this word about this film, but energetic. There's so much energy in this film. And even when nothing particular is happening, the music is saying, no, it will be. The music really... Like, I think I've talked about this briefly before with some of the Argento films that I've done. And I'm just thinking... So next week I'm going to do Demons 2, and I feel like I might do some 80s Argento after this. But anyway, I think it reminds me a lot of, like, the music in Tenebrae, like really, really synthy, really, really 80s, like sort of pop synth, if you could call it that, type of music that really, really... gives that real sense. It's not so much about suspense as it is about almost this aggressive build into something terrifying or exciting or scary or something happening. So, you know, they use that energetic music while Cheryl's sitting on the train, and she sort of has that image of Michele Soavi with his face half masked on the outside of the train, and he's just sort of there. But it's not overly clear if she sees it. I think, because I feel like if she did, she'd probably panic slightly more than she does. But anyway, so she goes through the tunnel and the music keeps playing, and then comes back out of the tunnel, and like she's sort of now staring at the people with this sort of agitated, oh my God, something's wrong. But like actually nothing's happened. And they're all these sort of 80s punk looking types just sitting there chilling, having a conversation. But it's like, it's really going to that extreme of using music to give us information that doesn't necessarily exist. So all we know is this image of this guy, right? And then, yeah. So after that, I think when she gets off the train and she's like the only person that gets offered a stop, apart, it would seem, from Michele Soavi, is, it's about, we don't, look, put it this way, there's not a lot of suspense building in this film, or at least the film is like all payoff, right? To the point of it being slightly ridiculous. So this really is the only part of the film that like there's genuine suspense. So she's sort of looking back and she sees Michele Soavi sort of following her, and this actually reminds me of some other train station related horror from Four Flies on Grey Velvet, when an investigator gets off the train, and they do it really well. I think that, silent, empty train station is a really, really cool, sort of incredible setting, I think. That underground setting as well, that no one can help you if the sort of nefarious or terrifying force should jump out at you, right? But so she wanders up the stairs, and then he's at the top of the stairs, sort of inexplicably, and gives her that ticket. And then he sort of wanders around and gives a couple of other people that are there tickets. It's sort of weird, because it's like, we've been told nothing about anything so far. we have been given. Apologies if that came through. Although I guess that's actually on topic. There is quite a bit of motorbike related action towards the end of this film, which I might get to. So I think we now get introduced to the sort of first part of like the brain deadery, shall we say, of a few of the characters, or basically all of the characters in this film. So I think maybe it's her face or her acting style, right? But Cheryl seems to be sort of the like the intelligent base of the film. But not that she does anything smart, it's just that everyone else in the film actively seems like an idiot. So is Cheryl resourceful? Not really. She turns into a bit of just a sort of stupid damsel in distress. She's pretty ineffective as the film goes on. But again, like I think this is sort of the deliberate makeup of the film, right? So she seems to be scared of Michele Soavi, but you know he literally says no words and gives her that ticket, and then she sees him giving other people tickets who are like they just take them. There's no conversation, nothing. It's like they're a bit mindless, right? Like the kind of people that would go and watch a horror movie, as we'll get into. But even with that terror, she goes back to him and asks for another ticket, because obviously she's going to get her friend, who I think her name is Kathy, to go with her. Yes, it's Kathy. And the humorous thing about that is, look, I can't remember if it's specified in the conversation when she meets up with Kathy, but like, it's like it seemed that she was going to meet her, and it's like, oh, well, we're going to this movie now, right? So they, okay, we'll just go to this movie now. There is something so in your face, and obviously, like, sorry, I just confused myself there a little bit. Let me just refer to my notes here. Anyway, so I'll get into the analysis, shall we say, of some of the people that go to this movie. And none of them seem to have any idea what the fuck they're doing. Like, it's not clear why any of them are there, other than presumably this guy's wandered around and just given them all tickets. But I honestly think this is some, like, genuinely great. There's some genuinely great comedic stuff that happens in this. Just in this little scene. I'll just actually point out that redhead actress. I think her name's Nicoletta Elmi, who is sort of like quite clearly cast in horror films just because she's got a slightly creepy face. So she was the little girl who stabs a couple of lizards in deep red, if you remember, the girl from the school. And so she's obviously a bit older now, and she's got this vibe. And, you know, the film very strongly sort of implies that she's obviously involved in this process of, I don't know, trying to turn all the world into demons, because obviously she gives these little nefarious looks, like when Rosemary puts the mask on her face, you know, you can see that she knows something's going on. But then later in the film, she seems to be escaping the carnage along with everyone else, so who the fuck knows? I don't know if her fate is sort of made clear by the end, so yeah, I'll just sort of leave it at that. So anyway, there's this sort of random mixture of people. There's that husband and wife where that husband's just a total asshole. I think she's just like, you know, you should be nice to me because it's our anniversary. He's like, no, I don't have to be nice to you because it's our anniversary. I'm taking you to a show, aren't I? And it's like, so, and they look sort of like well-to-do people. And it's like, okay, mate. So just to be clear, you're taking your wife. You don't have to be nice to your wife on the on your anniversary because you're taking her to a show, and the show is a stupid horror movie that you got free tickets for. So I think in many ways the film. Look, I think Cheryl and Kathy aren't like ridiculous characters, but they are just generic, dumb 80s horror characters. But every other character basically that gets sort of more than one scene, even a lot of them don't really have names, are like actively ridiculous, right? So straight off the top of my head, other characters, like a lot of them are just sort of there, right? But like there's those, there's the woman who's there with, and that woman she's very, very good looking, and she's with that older blind man. And then there's that sort of older balding business type guy who she keeps making out with. And so what the hell is this? So that happens. There's another younger couple who keep making out as well. There's a blonde girl with curly hair. I just can't quite place what other movie she was in. I'm sure she was in another horror film, another Italian horror film in the era. I just can't quite place. That's the couple that ends up in the air vent, and they're crawling around for. That's probably the other most suspenseful scene of the film. But even then, it's like not. The result is we don't even sort of see the result. We end up just with a demon sort of vomit screaming at the guy. And I have a feeling it might be the girl, actually. She's turned into one, which is one of the things that happens a number of times in this movie. It's not clear exactly when people are turning, but when they turn, don't we just know about it? Okay, I'm just saying what I've written in my notes. And these notes were from years ago, actually. So they were meant to be studying, and instead they're seeing a horror movie. Okay, and I think it's Kathy who says, "You're leading us astray," and you don't think it's going to be a horror movie, do you? And there's some really like deliberately lame, stupid quotes like that, right? That I think is like, I don't know, just there's a real sort of just like cultural satire, I guess, going on here. There's just ridiculous people going to watch horror movies. So on top of those people, there's also the pimp with Rosemary and the other girl, and he's just very comical. Everything about him is so over the top. Smash everything, smash everything, smash everything. And he's sort of the leader of the pack for a couple of minutes until he eventually gets demoned. So what happens? Okay, so Rosemary puts the mask on her face. And also it's worth mentioning, I don't know if it's an exact replica, but the mask is definitely a visual reference to the Mask of Satan. Lamberto Bava's father, the Mario Bava's 1960 film, which I've talked about. I talked about it under the rubric of it being called Black Sunday, but under some releases it's called the Mask of Satan. So that's cool. That's a cool visual reference, and it's just a really creepy mask, right? Like if there were a mask of Satan, that's what it would look like. And he's just, so she puts it on her face and she's sort of wandering around it. It's sort of funny because like the way she tries to like scare her friend or whatever. It's funny because like it's it is very much the way she sort of becomes when she turns into a demon. And I must say, that was the absolute correct call to make Rosemary the first demon, because fuck, she plays it so well. Like, she really gets into the zone of like the comedic. Like, she's so, I absolutely thrive on her aggression. Like, she's so like, I'm a demon now, I really want to go and demon some other people. And the way she's sort of crouching around and wandering around the cinema looking for people to kill, it's like they just made the right choice there, right? Like, I when I think of this film, you know, it's impossible not to think of her. So I think she absolutely owns that role. But you know, she takes the mask off because she's got a cut, and then the pimp guy tells her, "Well, that'll teach you to touch things." So like, he's just like, what a thing to say. Like presumably, because outside of this, like, presumably they're friends as well, or whatever the capacity of that relationship is. But like, he's just a total jerkbag to her because he thinks he can be. Yeah, so I think by the time the movie within the movie actually starts, we're already beginning to go, okay, well, these people are fucking idiots, but they're idiots to the point of it being deliberate. It has to be, right? The cheesy dialogue. You get those two, the other two guys, one of which is called George. I can't think of the name of the other bloke, who are, you know, initially, and again, it's like everything's like very, very primal and base. Like, there's a motorbike that they're really super interested in, and they're, wow. But then they see the two girls and they're like, they forget the motorbike. So it's like fast things and women. Very sort of, I'm surprised I didn't start talking about food or something as well, but very, very simple. So they go and talk to them, and yeah, that's right. There's some really deliberate product placement that happens where they Cheryl can't get her Coke out of the vending machine, and George comes and sort of punches the machine. It comes out. It's like, thanks. Oh, sometimes it just needs the right touch, which is just absolute demons dialogue, right? So then they sort of walk off, because Kathy seems to take a bit of an attitude towards these two guys, like no, they're gonna have to work a little bit harder than that, and that's probably fair enough. Just punching a vending machine really isn't good enough. So they go into the movie, and then it's sort of interesting because I think, look, I mean, it's a relatively short movie, and you could argue that, well, they've got to. There's only so much violence you can fit into this movie because you're going to run out of characters, and I think that's sort of what happens, right? Like, we sort of end up with Cheryl and George at the end on the motorbike, and that seems to take longer. Like, that process seems to take longer than the rest of the film, especially given by that point of the film there are more demons around the cinema, right? But anyway, so we're really in the last throes now of the suspense or the build-up part of the film. I find it quite interesting because we have a lot of these, I think, really cool shots. I don't know why I find them so cool, but shots of like sort of these low camera angle panning across, showing the various characters watching the movie and like talking to each other and saying very generic stuff, and you know, some of them talking to each other, is it going to be scary? And then there's a you know, the blind guy asks his attractive wife what's happening and stuff, and it's like it really sort of builds things in. But I think within that, this is the aspect of the movie that isn't just good because it's fun, right? It like this is the part that actually seems sort of genuinely good. The way the film transitions from just this stupid dialogue and transitions us towards the demons section of the film, shall we say, I think is really, really effective. And in the process of them doing it, they make abundantly clear that it's related to the movie within the movie. And this is where, as I say, I think the film has a lot more depth than people give it credit for. So I just want to point out at this point, I'm not going to go into, I think, too much detail about the plot from this point on, because frankly, everything is just like a violent, gory, energetic mess from this point. I'll make mention of certain things, but so you get all these different shots, and I personally think it's really effective when they put the mask on in the film within a film, and then the guy takes the mask off and there's just that little cut on his face, and then Rosemary's cut on her face has come back, and it's like, we obviously know what's going on, but just that vibe, that scary vibe of the film beginning to take over. And this is where the social commentary within the film lies. So she goes off to the bathroom, and what ensues is pretty disgusting. It's sort of it continues to get worse, and then it builds into this little ball and explodes all over the all over the mirror there in the bathroom. Now I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, and I can't. Whether do we see any more of Rosemary until the friend goes into the bathroom to see if she's okay? I'm not sure. So what I like about this little section of the film is they are very aggressive and unrelenting in the level of violence that happens in it. There's not a lot of time or even light, I think, from beyond this part of the film to really emphasize gore and emphasize violence in the most, I'd say, effective way. And I think it's important to really establish that with the early sort of kills or the early transformations, to emphasize that sort of level of extremity, because you need that to, I think, to really, drive you through the rest of the film. It's sort of like that tactic I think I've referred to before of killing a child at the start of Jaws, and it's like it keeps you on your toes for the rest of it, right? So the film within a film. We get so it's about when the cut happens, and I'm just trying to get the quote right. One of the guys within the film. In fact, I'm just trying to think. Is it Michele Soavi who puts it on within the film as well? That would make sense, given he's wearing it around. Anyway, one of the guys tells him not to put the mask on because it's whoever wears it becomes a demon. And then the guy's like, "Oh, well, how do you know that?" And he's like, "Because it says here, whoever wears it becomes a demon." And it's just like this ridiculous, just deliberate, over the top. And then it, becomes a demon and an instrument of evil. And see, this is where I think the film becomes. This is the genius of the film, and I'll get into my sort of social comment aspect of it now. I think it's key that lines like this are generic. And I don't want to actually give this film more credit than it deserves. And as a person who, did, Okay, did a few years of PhD and then got out of it, but has done a lot of film analysis. Yes, I could be accused of overanalyzing films and even giving them more credit than they deserve. But it has been a gap in my mind for a long time, the lack of people who actually seem to realize this film has a point. And I think it has a great, great, great point. So, again, think about how generic this line is. Whoever wears it becomes a demon and an instrument of evil. Now, for those of you who read my blog, I think my point is fairly succinct, but I think it does make sense, the way I write it. But basically, this film, I think, is poking fun at the attitude that led to the video nasty era, and that is the greater than thou types in our society who think horror film is, well, not only a waste of time, but is dangerous. You know, the kind of people who will follow a trial of a murder or something, and then the lawyer will bring up that they watched a horror movie, clearly very dishonestly, and everyone will say, yes, that's right, that's why they would have done it. Yep, because they watched that movie. This film is about people going to a horror film and as a result turning into demons, and as a result of that destroying society. Now, it's a little bit confusing to me why everyone always says that this film, like, it's more than any other film, and there are a lot, well, not any, but there are a lot of horror films that seemingly are just there to have fun, and that's fine. But for some reason, like, every single person who ever talks about this film goes, oh, it's great, it's just fun, it doesn't have anything to say, it's got no plot, blah, blah. It's like, no, and it fucking annoys me, because I'm like, think about what this film is saying. Think about what's happening in it. Also think about when it was made, right? When was the video nasties? Early 80s? There was a big swing in this at this time, and the attitude at the time. Also, don't forget, because going back even like to Dawn of the Dead, Jaws, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween. It's the first time really that there's been sort of regular blockbuster horror movies, right? So we're talking about an era, and also same thing in the Italian horror genre as well. But I think it goes beyond just the Italian horror genre. It does demons. It's the first time that the uppity people in society really have ever had to deal with the fact that horror films are an actual mainstream part of society, and that there are people who go and watch them. And you end up with the simplistic analysis of, people will act out what they say. And it's always the same kind of criticism. It's like, oh no, I can watch it, right? I can deem that this is too offensive and it won't affect me, won't affect my family or people that I know, but there will be people out there that blah, blah, blah. Now, as I said in my blog post, I don't know whether there's truth in it, right? And that I'm sure there are literally thousands of things that could trigger or provoke or whatever a person to go and do something horrible. The problem is the simplistic, stupid analysis that's just very simply, well, look at this, look at the movies they watch, look at the violence in the movies that they're watching. I didn't make mention of this in the blog post, but the modern example of this, obviously, for comparison, is Quentin Tarantino. And can I just say, I don't even particularly like Tarantino. As a guy, I think he thinks that he... I don't like his attitude about how they're his movies, even though he stole most of his ideas from other movies that most of his fans have never watched before. But there is that famous interview with that jackass... British journalist who just, I'm here to promote my movie, and he's all like, I've answered this before, and I don't want to talk about this. I'm shutting your butt down. So anyway, in that interview, I really like Tarantino. But the point to me is not so much let's be dismissive of the concept. The point is, what exactly is the criticism aiming to do? What, just ban horror movies? It's okay, but I think my problem beyond that is, even if, and there's no proof, by the way, but even if there was, even if there was a real genuine argument to the idea that, you know, people will watch this and act it out and stuff, it's always so baseline, because I never hear people like that actually A, saying why, but B, saying what else. Well, then what else do we need to ban? Because you know, we've heard things like about the Helter Skelter song and what that led to, just absolutely ridiculous stuff that may or may not be true, but is definitely ridiculous, that, you know, provoke people to do things. But why stop at horror movies, right? Like, why? I mean, there's horrific things that happen in war movies. I never hear people say, "Oh, we need to ban war movies because it's going to make people want to commit violence." There's horrible things that happen in, like, dramas all the time, even fucking rom-coms sometimes. But the point is, if this act out what you see, really basic analysis, if that's actually true, then why aren't more people acting out what they're seeing? So I know I've gone on a little bit, but I think that's necessary, because to me that is like the entire point of this film. And it's also why, in my mind, it justifies not just being a throwaway thing, and the easy way to think that it's very throwaway is just because of how constant the violence and just the energy of the film is, right? But see, this is where it gets the next part of that analysis, where another thing that I mentioned in the blog post is, I'll indulge myself a little bit again. So I grew up, well, for the first 8 years of my life, in a relatively small town in Victoria, Australia. And we used to have this really cool video store, and like actual video store. So I'm showing my age a little bit there. And it's sort of in the main street of the small town. And occasionally me and my brother would go and hire movies, not always horror movies, because when we were really little, Dad wouldn't let us. So what would happen, you'd see all these movies, and you'd be like, they'd usually have some kind of really evocative cover, and the monster or the demon or whatever would be on it, and in your head you would build yourself into the idea of what horror movies are like, right? And you end up being slightly wrong, and the part of it that is wrong, I think, is that the imagination, especially of the child, is very much like the worst thing imaginable. So, look, I'll speak for myself, but I feel like a lot of people have this idea. Anyone who is ignorant to the idea of a horror movie has this idea, that it's like just constant, generic, over-the-top violence. It's just violence for the sake of violence. There are disgusting creatures and they're whatever, right? So the thing about demons, and this is why I've loved it ever since I watched it for the first time, is demons is exactly how you imagine a horror film is when you're a kid, before you've ever seen a horror film. And there's something super nostalgic and appealing about that to me. Like, it's very plotless. There's just monsters everywhere. There's really disgusting, horrible, violent things happening, and it's just great. Now, I don't think the horror genre would do well from always being like that. Don't get me wrong, but I also think that at the time, this is what it called for, right? The genre, I think. You know, it had done subtlety at the time. It had done suspense, and as I said, I think we're in horror movies had now been around for long enough so they were culturally relevant, but also the cycle of films sort of cycle of really any sort of genre of films does play out eventually, and the slasher cycle I think was no longer being taken that seriously. I think the concept of like zombies or post-apocalypse type stuff was beginning to like it had been around for a while since George Romero, and even consider like the Thriller film clip from Michael Jackson, I think in 1982 maybe, and it's like zombies are used as like a bit of a joke, like not really to be taken seriously. And I think you see the result of that here, or well, not the result of that film clip, but a further evidence of that, where it's like the demons aren't to be, like, as a concept, like obviously within the film they are, but as a concept they're not to be taken seriously. Like, they're deliberately over the top, they're deliberately ridiculous, and as I would analyse, they're deliberately the extreme, like, super villains in the minds of the inexperienced horror watching child, or indeed the inexperienced, stupid bureaucrat who just seeks to justify their existence as a bureaucrat by banning shit. So what I'm saying is I think Demons is designed to be the exact film that stupid bureaucrats who want to ban horror films think horror films are like. It's very much like, oh, you want demons, you want violence, I'll give you fucking demons and I'll give you violence. And it's in the tradition of the ridiculous, right? The tradition of stupid horror movie characters, but it just takes it that step further. Like, I can't think of what George's friend's name is. I'll see if I can find it here. What do we got? Demons. There's Ken. Ken? Is he really called Ken? Anyway, don't worry about that. So Ken, like, Ken and George really, they are overacting right through the film, but like clearly in a deliberate way, and I absolutely thrive on it. But it's meant to be stupid. It's meant to be what people like the people that I've been referring to think of horror films as. And I think there's so much merit in that, and that's why I love it. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. So, we get some dialogue as well, I think, that makes it a little bit clearer. Like, at one point, I can't remember if it's Kathy maybe that says, like, it's happening just like in the movie. And then eventually someone's like, we've got to turn the movie off. And I find it quite hard to believe that there's no real, like, people don't sort of think of this. It's like, what is the film saying here? Just think, I know it's probably because, none of the dialogue in the film by any means seems to be trying to be deep or well written. I think it's well written in the way it's so effectively terribly written. But it's not. It doesn't seem to be trying to say, trying to be good. But at the same, like, I guess that's the reason why people don't notice, some of the subplot or morality or philosophy, shall we say, going on. But I find it really difficult to sort of miss when they're saying, it's the movie. We've got to turn off the movie. And it's like, okay, and especially given back in the mid-'80s when this kind of thing, like, back in the mid-'80s, to see a horror movie, you had to go and watch the cinema. So surely people in cinemas watching this thought in terms of sort of the meta commentary going on here. I know everyone's obsessed with meta commentary now because of Rick and Morty and other things, but I would have still thought at the time it was quite obvious. And I remember, as I said, when I went to watch it a few years ago in that cool cinema, I feel like everyone really enjoyed that aspect of it, right? But again, I'm not sure if anyone sort of thinks too deeply about this film, unfortunately. So that's where I'm filling in the gap. But like, there's a very clear comment going on. And the thing that surprises me about the lack of acknowledgement of that is it's not attempting to be subtle at all. A bunch of people go to a horror movie, turn into demons and destroy society. Is that not exactly what the video nasty people were trying to imply? If you go and watch horror movies, you will do horrible things and it will destroy the fabric of society. Is that not exactly what banning films was about? That you won't be able to not act out what's happening? And see, that's where it becomes even more blatant, I think, in Demons, because they act out exactly what happens, right? Like, Rosemary gets exactly the same cut as the guy in the film within the film. We see Michele Soavi within that film, and the makeup on him and the way his eyes change colour, and it's the same as the way that it happens in the actual film. It's like, to me, it's really, really obvious, okay? So anyway, I've probably ranted about that enough. I think from this point, I'd probably just like to point out just some other notable things from the film, sort of off the top of my head, because aside from it just being generally fun, as I say, I think there's some really, really great horror film moments in this film. Now, first, and I think I actually remember making this point to my girlfriend at the time when I went and watched it. I think the thing that makes this film most worthwhile, aside from all of these, self-indulgent analyses of it, is that when you boil it down, it's a proper horror movie, and as much as it's hilarious when Giancarlo's prancing around, skulking around, sort of really actively looking for victims. The fact of the matter is, the setting in this film is creepy, and also she's a creepy as fuck demon, right? I don't know, something about the dreadlocks, the makeup, like, and just the way she plays it. It's like, this is a scary character, and there's so much scope for suspense and for shock and whatnot in this cinema. Like, it's dark, and there is something creepy about cinemas in general, I think, right? Because you go in and you just, you don't really think a lot about everything that's going on, but like, they're dark, and who the fuck knows what's going on, behind the screen. And obviously they really take advantage of that in this film. So aside from it being comical, it's also scary. And I think that sort of 80s synthy theme that, usually is quite fast, but they have some other sort of synthy noises and stuff. Like, I'm thinking when the demons are walking up the stairs and stuff. Like, it's it's a piss take. It's over the top. It's ridiculous, but damn, it's still a fucking horror movie. And this is why I think there's so much payoff to it. Other things of note, I'll say, I think there's a visual reference to Suspiria when the balding making out guy hangs or gets hung, like at the start of Suspiria when that main character gets hung. I think just the makeup in general, like the vomiting demons, brilliant, honestly, well put together. I will say that, like, because I've watched like Argento get interviewed about this before, and he sort of makes the point that, like, 10 years ago, if you wanted to have a scene where a helicopter falls into a theatre, it'd be really difficult. But now you just drop a helicopter into a theatre, and I think that's sort of hilarious. But at the same time, I think they dropped an actual helicopter into this theatre. I feel like they could have got some better shots out of that. Like, it's just not the most impressive visual scene. It's like, you actually did that. It could have looked better. But anyway, I think the scene generally in the air vent is really good. I think that girl's Fiore Argento, so I think is she one of Dario's daughters, maybe? Again, I still can't think of what else she's in. Tenebrae? I don't know. Phenomena? Anyway. That's reminding me of the motorbike again, actually. And this is where it's sort of, the taking the piss aspect of the film. Which is most of the film. Like, everyone's sort of dead, and it's like, yeah, let's have this scene where George rides around on the motorbike, with a katana, killing demons. And it's all right. Yeah, let's just do this. Because the thing is, now I don't care for motor things and things going really fast. But I almost feel like the film doesn't either. I almost feel like it's taking the piss out of it. Because everything in the film seems to be a piss take, right? Another thing I'll make note of, Kathy's death. I mean, look, I think that like, it happens a number of times throughout the film, and it becomes very predictable. But when there's like those characters sort of crouched down and we can only see the back of their head, and like people are saying their name, they're not really turning around, that's so effective in this film. And the reason it's effective is because we all know that they're going to be a demon when they turn around, but because the makeup and the effects are so effective, like the payoff is completely there. And Kathy's transformation is fucking cool. Like, it's so cool. That voice, like, where are we? Where am I? Whatever it is she says. Yeah, sensational. Just such a fucking cool scene. Then, when she's crouched over, and the demon comes out of her back. Now, fuck, that's a cool scene. But this that moment, she's crouched over, and like, quite clearly something's beginning to break through her back, and every person ever would be looking at her back, and George goes, "Look at her back." It's like, it's all right, George. I'm pretty sure Cheryl and Ken are looking at her back, mate. But the way the demon sort of jumps out of her back and then just sort of swans away is so funny. I guess it's the only actual demon we see in the film. And it's also, I sort of love the sort of absolute lack of clarity about the scope of what's going on here. So, like, everyone seems to be able to turn into, like, demon versions of themselves, but then apparently demons can sort of birth themselves in your back or something. But I also love that, we have this demon and it's damn cool, and all that happens is it just sort of runs off. And I think gets katanaed by by George, but you know, I don't know. So yeah, and then we get again. There's probably a few really cool scenes that I've missed here, but as is my tendency when I think about demons, I do get very distracted by all the other outside stuff. So yeah, then George just has the ability to use that equipment within the helicopter to just shoot them out of the roof, which is really handy. And then Michele Soavi appears and tries to kill him, and they kill him instead. And that's a really gory scene. Of course, I've got to make mention of those idiots driving around doing the coke. Again, some rather hilarious product placement with coke being in it. And they've got a can of coke with a straw in it, but they're snorting coke out of the can of coke. I mean, is there any need for it? No. These characters are as ridiculously mid-80s as you could possibly be. They have nothing to do with anything in the film. It's not even that clear to me what happens. Do they just sort of become demons once they're in there? I don't know. Again, it's like we've got to fill in our 85 minutes with something. And yeah, they end up on the back of that truck, with, you know, a family, including a little blonde boy played by the boy from The House by the Cemetery, whose name I can't think of off the top of my head. And then Cheryl is a demon. They shoot her, and that's it. The unrelenting nature of the film is, and this is in the credits, right? This is why it's so high energy. This is reflective of how high energy it is. That even in the credits, you know, either there's 4 main characters, but I think Cheryl is the main character. I guess when they were fighting around the helicopter, she might have got scratched or something. But I love that in the credits of the film, we kill the main character, and it's just like George has really got a thing for Cheryl, but she gets shot, and then we get that brutal shot of her just lying dead on the road there. And George just seems to be like, oh, well, fuck. And then he's just on the back of the truck, and that's it. And it's great. It's just fucking great. So I guess that's been my analysis of Demons, 1985 by Lamberto Bava. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I actually added something to the discussion of this film. As I said a number of times on this podcast, I sort of can't believe that people haven't really made this point very much. Like, as far as 80s or 70s Italian horror films go, Demons is quite well known within that context, and a lot of people are big fans of it, but I don't think they've ever seen it from the dig at the sort of cultural betters that we have in the way that I see it. Who knows, maybe I'm wrong. Get on the Italian Horror Guy blog and write a comment under the blog if you would like. I would absolutely love if I could get that kind of engagement going on, so hopefully I can grow that over time. But nonetheless, I'm really enjoying talking about these films in this way. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I will be doing Demons 2 next week, and that is sort of just like the same as Demons, but you know, it's also very fun. I can't remember it as clearly, but what I do remember is, you know, it's really, again, the same concept of the commentary, the social commentary of things being bad because people are watching things. Because if memory serves, I think the demons come directly out of the TVs in this film. And despite it not being sort of a follow-up to the events of the first one, a lot of the same actors are in it, including the pimp dude, Bobby Rhodes, I think his name might be. Anyway, join me for that one next week. Get on the blog site, read the blog, read the other blog as well, and they will become more regular. I'm really looking forward to writing those. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and do join me for future weeks, but definitely join me for next week, where I discuss Demons 2. Have a great week, everyone.